Okay, when I started getting interested in accessibility, and I started working on it about 18 years ago, it was mostly for personal reasons. My mother has had mobility issues since I was a child, so that was enough for me to understand how important accessibility is. But even with this experience, it feels very different when it happens to you directly. If I could talk to my younger self, I would warn him about a couple of things. I would tell him what I'm about to confess today. I'm about to confess that I have one of the most common disabilities of all, getting older. Yeah, you can probably understand me. We all get older and our vision, mobility, and energy doesn't work as well as before. This was me at 23, the same year I started working on accessibility. Here I'm playing basketball, my favorite sport, and I could be playing for hours and hours. And I only needed a hot shower to full recover. And this is me today, when I try to play basketball the same way I used to play when I was 23. Yeah, as you can see, I broke my foot, I needed surgery, and the recovery took much more than a hot shower. Yeah, you can see here my new friend, the nail. So yeah, I'm sure all of you can understand the difficulties of physical accessibility when you have a broken foot, a broken arm, or something similar. But actually, the same thing happens in the digital world. Over time, you will need more help to do the same task you used to do. And when you think about it, isn't this what technology is for? To help and support people? Yeah, I'm getting older, and in my case, I've started using some accessibility tools or features. I use keyboard as much as possible because it makes me much more productive. And I always use dark mode because bright light bothers me a lot. And I use much more accessibility features, but let's stop talking about me and about how old I am. I actually feel pretty young. And now, speaking in general, it's estimated that more than 80% of the mobile users are using one or more accessibility features. So it's not only me, right? Right? You should be saying, yes, Marcos. Okay. So this is my main advice for today. Be selfish. Take care of your future yourself. Yeah. Build accessible products for your older self. I'm going to take some water, just to give you time to read this sentence 2 or 3 times. Good? Yes? So, yeah, just in case, I know that getting older is not an official disability, but some of the consequences of getting older require accessibility features or helpers. And you can help build them. Accessibility has been the starting point for many of the good experiences we have today. For example, the vibration in your mobiles is directly coming from the old pages. You know? You remember that? And for example, the dark mode or high contrast mode are directly coming for Windows 95. And voice assistant are based or inspired on VoiceOver, released with the iPhone 3GS. Nowadays, accessibility is a strong selling point. This is the example of the last iOS version, where Apple decided to break the design and use those giant buttons there. The reality is that it's more accessible and makes sense. So we can say that accessibility, good design, or even common sense all aim the same results. But if in 2025 you still don't know why accessibility is so important, you have probably just been lucky because no one around you, your family, your friends, or even yourself, have you needed accessibility tools, and that's perfect and good. But even if you are not thinking about that, the law is here. Yeah, it's here to remember the importance of accessibility. The European Accessibility Has is the biggest change in accessibility in recent years, and is focused on protecting the end user. This is the most important part. It's focused on protecting the end user. It's also providing ways to report issues and check compliance, and has been transposed into local laws in all European members. So we have a lot of different laws based on the European Accessibility Act. Here, the big disclaimer. You can clearly see the super big disclaimer here. Yeah, we are going to be speaking about the European scope, but it's pretty similar in other countries around the world. Also, super important, a contract could be more demanding, so be careful. You could be signing something more demanding than the European Accessibility Act. And please, always check your local regulation. Your local regulation could be adding something more on top of Accessibility Act. Also important to state that the WCAG standard underlying the European Accessibility Act were recently approved as international standard. It makes it easier for other countries to join. Okay, don't read this, please. This super big slide just to say that Liferay doesn't only need to comply with the European Accessibility Act. We also need to meet other regulations that affect people who use administration tools and content creation. So if you hire someone that have specific needs, accessibility needs, that person must be able to use Liferay administration and content creation. So we can understand you. We know that this can be a challenge that can change the way we all work. Yeah, Liferay are historically accessible platforms. This is a reality. We know this because of you, because many of you have been creating accessible sites for years and years. And for example, my first talk speaking about Liferay and accessibility was as a partner about 14 years ago, and I was presenting 15 accessible public sites. So I know from experience that this is something absolutely possible. Last year at DevCon, we published the liferayinclusive.com. The site is proof we can create highly visual and accessible sites in Liferay. It's a site initializer, and you can download and reuse. Okay, let's speak a bit about data. More than 1,000 Liferay clients have accessibility needs and are already creating accessible sites. Typically, a Liferay client has more than one site. We even have one client with more than 60 accessible public sites. So how many accessible sites are there in total? Difficult to say, but I tried to do the exercise here in Spain. In Spain, we have 155 clients with accessibility needs, and I decided to stop when I reached 1,400 sites, accessible sites. So I think this is a good enough proof that Liferay is a good choice to create an accessible sites. Okay, this is the data, and it's okay, right? But we don't know if those sites are actually implementing accessibility correctly. So are they going to be fined? It's not so simple. If you remember, the European Accessibility Act is protecting the end user. So the end user has a lot to say here. So to know if those sites are going to be fined, we need the end user point of view. So I created the end user journey. It's a highly simplified view of the legislative process. Okay, now using the Spanish law as an example, let's try to follow the diagram. The first step that you can see there is the end user find an issue and directly complain to the responsible company. Let's say that this company is going to be, for today, Clarity. Is it familiar to you? Okay. If Clarity fixes the issue, the user is going to be happy, and everything is okay. If not, we go to the second one, and if after 20, 30 days for Clarity, because it's a private company, there is no response, or the response is negative, the user can start a complaint before the local or national competent authority. The competent authority will ask the end users if he tries to communicate with Clarity before. So the first step, this communication, the first communication is totally essential, and the 30 days waiting period is essential. Now, if Clarity is not fixing the issue at this point, the user is fixing, the issue at this point, the user is going to be happy, everything is okay. So if not, is fixing the issue, the competent authority will contact Clarity, and Clarity will explain why it's not fixing the issue. But at the end of the day, if the issue is a real issue, the authority will require the fix. If Clarity fix the issue, the user is going to be happy and everything will be okay. If not, okay, the penalty fine process begins. Depending on the law and the previous communication between Clarity and the authority, Clarity could have time to fix the issue. So one more time. If Clarity fixes the issue, the user is going to be happy. If not, the fine will be sent to Clarity, and the end user is informed. This is a simplification, but it would be something like this. So, can you see the patterns here? If we simplify the diagram and focus on the user interactions and their consequences, things are much more clear. Ending up with a fine is the result of repeated communication failures and a refusal or inability to fix the issues. And in the other side, the user simply wants to use your site and be happy using your service. So what I'm trying to express here is no matter how complex the legislative interaction may be, the way to avoid problems is listen what your end user needs. So actually, as you can see, it's not easy to get a fine. Easy, you know. You will need to ignore a lot of communication processes, as you can see over there. So you only need to keep the conversation open with your end users and your partners. Let's see a quick example with Liferay as your partner. Let's try to imagine the end user reports an issue, to your company. And you discover that the issue is coming from Liferay. Well, it could happen. Okay, it's on Liferay side. You communicate the issue to Liferay and update the end user to keep the conversation open. Liferay fix the issue or provide a clear alternative. The issue gets resolved and the user is happy again because now can use your website. This will be a perfect collaboration between you and Liferay. Right? Okay, in accessibility, everything centers around the same philosophy. Accessible design and development, assuming nothing is perfect, so we need to be prepared for the unexpected reports. So maybe saving time for the possibility of those reports and providing feedback and following up fixes. Following this philosophy, everything is going to be easy. Now speaking about the implementations, what do we need in our site to comply? The accessibility page is an essential. Accessibility page should include info about your features, your commitment to accessibility, exception if you have a part of the website that is not completely accessible for some reason. And we have been speaking a lot about contact, so of course we need the contact form here or the link to the contact form, and it's also super important. And see if your site is in the public sector, banking, or is a commerce, you need the compliance levels. So the compliance level can be a document, a page, can be a section in the accessibility page. But it's always recommended because it's a good way to provide the accessibility status. What about testing? It's super important, of course, but most accessibility barriers requires human validation, especially those related to content, keyboard, cognitive issues, etc. So, my second advice for today, you need to test realistic accessibility scenarios. Because if you don't, You will be completely lost when your users start reporting real issues. So let's try to know the accessibility tools your users are using. Pretty obvious, but it's going to work. How is Liferay helping on site development and content creation? Yeah, you are probably already familiar with Page Audit. It integrates Google Lighthouse and is very useful for non-technical users to quickly validate a full page. Just a reminder here, we need to validate full pages because if a component, content, and the page structure must be evaluated together in the same context. The next CK editor introduced new plugins, and we are trying to add some of them to improve accessibility. And a great feature we integrate provides all the necessary shortcuts to create accessible content. Thanks to Gerardo, front-end infra team, I think Dan is over there. Okay, about ThemeS. ThemeS is the Liferay first product that is accessible by design. Accessibility has been present in every stage of the design process. And we have been able to improve contrast, color, clarities. We have simplified patterns. We have expanded functionality of some components like autocomplete, picker, etc. Much more. Okay, what about the future and future improvements? We are part of the Design Token community group, which recently released a new version, a new standard, and we are trying to adopt this naming and structure definition as much as possible to make it easier to use tokens. If you had the opportunity to watch the Evan talk, he was providing a lot of information about this, and it's a great talk, highly recommended. We are using those tokens to create the dark and light versions of our components. And it will be an improvement on the admin side controls that you will be able to reuse in your sites if you need it or you want it. We are also working on high contrast version, using color tokens, changing the colors contrast from AA to AAA. You might notice that the change is now pretty. Yeah, can you see the difference? But to make it more clear, let's increase the light, like on a sunny day. And what about now? Yeah, that's the improvement. So probably you noticed this. Yesterday, during the first presentation, we had some contrast issues. And this is very real because not all users have their monitors perfectly calibrated. So now it's fixed. Thank you, Marcus. But we could have avoided the issue using high contrast. This is what you should have seen yesterday, seeing perfectly the borders and the boxes. And this one could be the high contrast mode. Much more clear, right? We are also improving the focus. This will be an extra feature included from the accessibility menu. And is helping users to locate the focus more easily, even when they are coming from another tab. Do we need to add more extra accessibility options? Even if the improvements are something that the law is not asking for? Yeah, all those efforts are important, and the users who face accessibility barriers will feel the difference we are making. So it's actually super important. Yeah, we are about to publish new VPATs, voluntary product accessibility template. This time we will split the document per product, make them easier to understand and more specific. This time, the first one will be the DXP one, probably in early December. Okay, now I would like to answer two frequently asked questions. The first one is about the responsibility. Who is the responsible, Liferay, the implementer, or the end user? I've tried to simplify into a single slide. So if the issue is on the administration or widget use on client side, probably the responsible one is going to be Liferay. If the issue is On the public side, structure, templates, or page semantics, probably the implementer. And if the issue is on the final content, probably the content editor. But yeah, probably the content editor should be using some templates, structures, etc. So the implementer here could also help. And sometimes it's the same person or the same company. So. Okay, about how to report or how to ask for help. Please here use our support channels. This is the right way to communicate and fix accessibility issues. Most of them are fixed on the first pass by the support team, and for the rest, they can be escalated. And platform experience team will be there to help. 47 is the number of issues the platform experience team had to review the last 3 months. And every single one was successfully closed by fixing something, providing an alternative, or giving a clear and detailed explanation. So yeah, we can help you with your end users and issues. We are getting to the end, and I want to make sure 2 things are totally clear. The first one is choose Liferay for accessibility sites, for your accessibility sites. We are totally ready, both in capacity and mindset. And the second one, keep communication open with your users and your partners, and always provide information and feedback. In this talk, we have been speaking about laws, about compliance, about how to avoid fines. But at the end of the day, it helps yourself, your future self, your friends, and your family. So let me finish with the first advice. Be selfish. Take care of your future yourself. Thank you.